The cinematography, y'all, it's so good. Like, it's the freaking poetic cinema meme. Like, God, I love it so much. Hi lads, it's the end of the day, the sun is setting, I don't know how much daylight I have left, but I figured I would just come in here and share the things that I have really been enjoying, like watching, reading during this horrible lockdown season. I'll leave timestamps for everything down below because this might be a very long video. And since we are still in lockdown, if you yourself have any like book, TV show, movie, album, podcast recommendations to give me, please leave them down below. Now, without any further ado, let's get it. Alright, so first let's discuss TV shows. The first TV show that I want to recommend to everybody if you haven't seen it is on Netflix. It's a Korean TV show called Kingdom. 2 seasons of it are out on Netflix with 6 episodes each. Each episode is around an hour long. The original Korean track is available on Netflix, but they also have all these different like language dubs. I would honestly just, if you're able to, please just watch it in the original Korean with subtitles, because the little bit that I experienced of the dubs, they were just not good. And I feel like you will actually have a subpar experience watching the show with the dub. So Kingdom is a historical drama. I'm not sure exactly when it's supposed to take place, probably somewhere around 200 to 300 years ago. Trying to explain the plot is like really insane. There's a virus that breaks out in historical Korea. The symptoms of the virus basically kind of turn people into a zombie. And the drama is basically about how the Crown Prince of Korea is forced to work with like this random soldier and a nurse to try and stop the spread of this virus. And of course, because he's the Crown Prince, while this whole virus is going on, there are a whole bunch of people who are trying to make sure that he can like never ascend to the throne. Now, I'm a person who I generally hate period dramas because I hate the gender dynamics in them, and I also hate zombies. I don't like anything that is scary. And yet, I am sitting here recommending that drama to you with 100% confidence because Kingdom really is that bitch. It is genuinely so good. It has it all. If you're a lover of like beautiful costuming and cinematography, it's got that. If you're a lover of like political drama and intrigue, it's got that. If you are a lover of a good like zombie apocalypse scenario, it's got that for you too. And because the zombie apocalypse is in the form of like a virus pandemic, all of their discussions about essentially like hashtag flattening the curve are really, really relevant. More than that, it is one of those dramas that it's just like watching it is so incredibly cathartic, for lack of a better word. I find that when real life is really, really stressful and uncomfortable, having a TV show artificially build stress and tension and then just release it all, it actually ends up releasing some of my real life stress along the way as well. But generally, the plotting is superb. The plot twists and curveballs that they throw at you as they increasingly find out more about how this zombie virus actually works, it's so good. It's gripping, it's entertaining. The love of my life, Bae Doona, is in it. Also, if anybody's worried that they do that thing where they like force a romance situation where it's absolutely not appropriate because like the world is coming to an end, they don't do that. So Kingdom is like my #1 rec. I watched it via Zoom with like a bunch of friends. We had such a good time. We were like discussing theories, trying to predict what happens next. The group of us would like log on to the Zoom call and we'd be like, okay, we're only watching 1 episode tonight. And then the moment that episode ended, we'd be like, so the other one? Let's keep going. It's the perfect drama to binge watch. The end of the episodes kind of just want to make you keep going. And can I just say, like, watching it in the dark, headphones on, some of those jump scares got me. And even though I hate scary things, like, damn, it was still so good. Please watch it and let me know what you think. And if you've already watched it, please discuss it down with me in the comments below, because man, the next thing that I want to talk about, and it's actually a perfect segue because it has the same screenwriter as Kingdom, is the K-drama series Signal. Signal is also on Netflix. It came out in 2016, and to date, it is still one of like the highest rated Korean dramas of all time. Genre-wise and tonally, it is completely different to Kingdom. It's actually a modern day police procedural murder mystery scenario. The story basically follows a young police officer who finds a walkie-talkie, and As he picks up the walkie-talkie and he starts talking into it, he slowly comes to realize that the person talking to him at the other end of the walkie-talkie is actually in the past. And so you have a police officer in like 2016 communicating with a police detective in the 1990s to try and solve a whole bunch of cold cases together. What's really interesting is that all of the big cases that they try to solve, they're modeled after real life criminal cases that happened in Korea. And even though there is that like one weird magical element of like talking to somebody in the past through a walkie-talkie, the thing that actually really impressed me about Signal was the realism, in that it doesn't pull any punches at tackling just how corrupt the police force in Korea can be. And this is like a reality for so many different countries around the world, right? That you just like, you can't trust the police because the police are actually more likely to hurt you or cover things up if you've been hurt than they are to actually help you. And so I actually found it really interesting how as they're going and solving these mysteries really like enjoyably, and you're having a good time trying to figure out like who the murderer is and how things happen and all that kind of stuff, that you're also getting some insight into how corruption works and how corruption isn't just like one or two bad apples in a system, that oftentimes the system is sort of built in a way that is just really, really messed up, and that so many people end up being complicit in creating systems that are corrupt. So it's like a good fun time, but it's also like a really interesting, thought-provoking time. One of the characters did start getting on my damn nerves in the last couple episodes, but it did not take away from my enjoyment of the series as a whole, and Signal was one of the things that not just me, but like my entire circle of friends, we were all like, that was some good shit. It deserves all the praise that's been heaped on it. So if you maybe saw Parasite and that was your first exposure to Korean film and you're like, what can I watch next that's like good? Kingdom and Signal, they have the Prachi stamp of approval. They have the stamp of approval of lots of other people, much more important and significant than me, and they're just genuinely very good and easily accessible if you have Netflix. Other things that I've been watching, the new season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine finally became available on Netflix, and so I actually made the executive decision to go back and rewatch the entirety of Brooklyn Nine-Nine from the start. And it just made me genuinely realize how good of a drama it was, how funny it was, how much I have grown to like love and care for these characters, that I reference Brooklyn Nine-Nine like all the time in my day-to-day life. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's a police procedural drama that doesn't take itself too seriously, and yet they also manage to tackle a whole bunch of themes like racism, sexism, homophobia, dysfunctional families, how messed up the American prison system is. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine manages to do all of that while having just like an incredibly diverse and talented cast. Anyway, I'm not gonna keep blabbering on about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm just plugging it in here to say that if you've never watched it before,
give it a whirl, girl.
Okay, so the next thing that I'm gonna mention, and I'm really only mentioning this out of obligation because quite frankly, like who hasn't watched this, is Tiger King. Yes, I watched the entirety of fucking Tiger King, and it's hard for me to recommend that you watch that. Specifically, and it's funny I'm saying that because amongst my friend group, I was the one campaigning so hard for other people to watch it. And that's because like, at the time that I was watching it, it felt like nobody that I knew was also watching it. And Tiger King as a show is so ridiculous and so like WTF is happening that I was begging people in my life to please just watch it to make sure that I wasn't like having a fever dream. So I actually ended up like roping like 3 or 4 of my friends into watching Tiger King, and it's like such a journey. The only reason why I would even like recommend you watch it is because Tiger King is so crazy that you really have to witness it for yourself to believe anything that anyone is saying about it, right? If I sit here and I try to tell you that the main character of Tiger King is a gay redneck with 2 husbands who owns 200 big cats and sings weird country songs about how his nemesis might have murdered her second husband and then fed him to her pet tiger cats, Like, just think for 1 second about the sentence that just came out of my mouth. Like, how much of that actually registered with you? Like, Tiger King's insane. There is a mobster drug lord whose life was the inspiration for Tony Montana in Scarface, and this mobster drug lord who happens to own a bunch of pet tigers may or may not have dismembered a federal agent and smuggled a bunch of cocaine inside a bunch of snakes, and yet he remains the most likable, sympathetic, and sanest tiger owner in that entire TV show. And also, he only has like a 5-minute cameo because he's the least crazy bitch of the bunch. On the one hand, I'm like, damn, you should watch it just to like be in the cultural zeitgeist, be in the know, figure out what the hell people are talking about, because Carol Baskins definitely killed her husband, whacked him. But at the same time, I'm beginning to find it increasingly difficult to recommend that people watch Tiger King because it seems like people are like mythologizing Joe Exotic, and it's like, yo, let us not lose sight of the fact that Joe Exotic is still highly problematic, and that in fact he is an out and out racist who has repeatedly protested the fact that he as a white person isn't allowed to say the N-word, and that the documentary makers made the conscious choice to omit all of Joe Exotic's racism from the documentary series. I say all this to say that like Joe Exotic is a piece of shit, and while we're sitting out here having a laugh, making all these like Carol Baskin memes and TikToks, like we need to not lose sight of the fact that Joe Exotic is actually kind of a terrible human being who deserves to be in jail. And that a lot of the other people who are still not in jail, like that fucking Doc Antle dude who had the audacity, the sheer nerve to call himself Bhagwan, which is the Sanskrit word for God, that man is a straight up predator who needs to be jailed too. Watching it is like you're having a fun time because it's probably like really removed from you, but at the same time, it's like really disheartening because these are real people and a bunch of them are like getting away with stuff. If you have thoughts on Tiger King, please leave them down below because like it's been almost like a month since I watched it and I'm like still at a loss. The next TV show I want to plug, if you don't mind watching things with subtitles, honestly, like I watch a lot of media that is not in English. I will always choose the original audio and subtitles because like if I can see a person's mouth moving and then the audio that's coming out is not matching, oh, I hate that. So I have no qualms watching things with subtitles in languages like I don't speak or understand. Just throwing that out there before I give you my next recommendation, which is in Spanish. In fact, the next 2 things I want to recommend are both in Spanish. And I know that I have a couple native Spanish speaker subscribers. Hi, Maria. So not all of you are gonna need subs for that, but I'm just, you know, throwing out that little subtitles disclaimer beforehand. Now, the one that I have watched the first 2 seasons of, but I haven't watched the 3rd season, which has just recently come out, is the show Money Heist, or La Casa de Papel. So as the English title Money Heist would suggest, this is basically a heist TV series. It follows a group of strangers who are kind of all brought together for the purpose of conducting a huge heist against the Spanish treasury. I do believe there is an English dub of Money Heist, but again, I've never seen it, so I can't tell you how good it is or not. It is 6 p.m. Why is construction still going on? And I can't speak for the 3rd season. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to watch it probably sometime during the month of May. But the first 2 seasons were bangers. Like, I had such a good time watching. The last 2 TV shows that I want to recommend are ones that I'm actually kind of like in the middle of watching, but I figured I'd throw them out there just in case people have already seen them and they want to like talk about it in the comments, or in case people kind of almost want to like virtually watch with me and experience it together. So the first of these is still in Spanish, but Mexican Spanish this time, whereas Money Heist is in like Spain Spanish, and it's La Casa de las Flores, or The House of Flowers. And this, from what I'm given to understand, is basically supposed to be kind of a spoof on the telenovela genre and how just like over dramatized and ridiculous and crazy everything is. The show follows this very dysfunctional upper class Mexican family, the De La Moras. and they own like a florist shop as well as like a cabaret, both called La Casa de las Flores, or the House of Flowers. The entire series is just like so incredibly beautifully shot. It's like lush and colorful and incredible, as you would expect it to be, considering that it's all kind of about like flowers. It has really like interesting and critical things to say around like homophobia in Mexican society, around anti-blackness in Mexican society, and it has a lot to say about like class and wealth. I just realized I'm making it sound like it's like really serious. It's like, it's not. It's genuinely not. It's a comedy. There are like times during each episode where I am actually openly laughing. It's like comedic, but in a very sort of like dark way. Like it's a black comedy. That's what I'm looking for. That is the phrase. So far, I'm having such a good time, and I'm improving my Spanish, so win-win. The last TV show that I'm like not actually done with, I'm still in the middle of watching, is another Korean drama called Itaewon Class. The plotline of Itaewon Class, like they outline all of this in basically the first 2 episodes, so it's not like I'm like spoiling anything, is that this guy in high school, Park Se-ro-wi, his dad gets killed by the son of this like really insanely wealthy head of a corporation. And so Se-ro-wi, in like a fit of grief and rage, assaults the rich young kid who kills his dad and gets thrown into jail. The bulk of the drama is about what happens after Se-ro-wi comes out of jail. He wants revenge against the CEO who pressed charges because he assaulted his son. And the company that the CEO runs is like a food company, specifically one that has a whole bunch of restaurants. And so Se-ro-wi's plan is to build a competing restaurant in Itaewon, and he ends up sort of assembling this like ragtag group of people, none of whom have really any fixed sets of dreams, hopes, and ambitions, and all of whom are in some way, shape, or form kind of like outcasts or alone or separate from society. And they end up eventually being not just each other's co-workers, but really close friends, and eventually family. And so there's like a lot going on. There's like the revenge plot, there's like restaurant food drama, but there's also a lot of like people who are just trying to figure themselves out and figure out their place in this world and what to do with it. All of those like classic questions that hit us at like 3 a.m. when we're like having a crisis. You know, like when we're kind of like, God, like what are the choices that I've made that have gotten me here? Like what do I think about them? Have I progressed far enough in life? Am I even on the right track? Those are the kinds of things that Itaewon Class like ends up casually exploring as it's telling this bigger overarching story about trying to open and run a restaurant, get revenge, and there's some romance and stuff thrown in as well. So I'm only like 7 episodes in. We shall see how it ends up, but I figured I'd throw that recommendation out there in case some of y'all have already watched it, or in case people want to watch it along with me. Alright, that's everything in terms of TV shows. In terms of movies, the first thing that I'm going to recommend to everybody, because I sat down and rewatched all of his movies during this lockdown, is I would recommend people take a good dive into Bong Joon Ho's discography. Bong Joon Ho is a name that a lot of people are familiar with now because he is the director of Parasite, the movie that won the Academy Award for Best Picture this year. But I personally have been part of Bonghive for a very long time, ever since I saw the movie Snowpiercer in theaters, because I was going through a phase where I really liked Chris Evans and I was trying to watch his entire discography. So shout out Chris Evans for getting me really into Bong Joon Ho. But after I finished watching Snowpiercer, I was so taken aback by how good of a movie it was that I went back and I watched Bong Joon Ho's entire filmography. As a person who has watched everything that Bong Joon Ho has ever put out, if you have only ever seen Parasite, I'm going to give you 3 recommendations of potential movies to watch. The first one, if you really hate subtitles, if you want to watch something that's almost entirely in English, if you want something that's like a little bit more accessible, you want to see some familiar faces, etc., I would suggest that you watch the movie Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer stars my man's Chris Evans, aka Captain America, also stars Tilda Swinton and Octavia Spencer and a bunch of other people. And the basic premise of Snowpiercer is that something happened to this world, and now the entire planet is frozen over in snow. All of humanity that is left on this planet is on a single train called the Snowpiercer, which circumnavigates the globe. And life on the train is divided up into very distinct sections. So way at the back of the train, you have like the lower class, the poor, the hungry, the starving, and as you move forward into the train, closer and closer to the front, people get richer and more affluent. And so Chris Evans basically plays this guy from the back section of the train, the poor section of the train, who decides to lead a group of rebels who are like, enough is enough. We're making our way to the front. Class is like a major theme in this, just like it kind of was in Parasite. Snowpiercer like will always have a very soft spot in my heart because it was like the gateway Bong Joon Ho movie for me. It's how I like got into Bonghive, and that movie like deserves so much more attention than it got at the time that it came out. So that's Bong Joon Ho recommendation number 1. But if a post-apocalyptic train scenario is not your cup of tea, I offer you Mother. The mother to whom the title is referring, her son has a mental disability and he gets accused of murdering a young girl. And so we follow this mother as she tries to clear her son's name and figure out who actually killed the young woman. It is an emotional roller coaster of a movie. At some points you feel like your heart's been ripped out, but it's also so funny at times. It was the first Bong Joon Ho movie I saw after Snowpiercer, and it was the thing that like cemented me as part of Bonghive, because I just remembered being like, his mind, it's so powerful.
I am so powerful. My mind, oh, it amazes me sometimes.
Of all of Bong Joon Ho's movies, it's the most, I think, like micro film in that it is a film that is really at its core just about family. So if you're more into like family dramas and what it means to be a parent, then Mother is the movie I would wholeheartedly recommend for you. If on the other hand you are a crime lover, recommendation number 3 I have from Bong Joon Ho's filmography, discographies for music, filmography, is Memories of a Murder. This is one of the like earlier Bong Joon Ho films. It came out, I think in like 2003, 2004. And remember like 30 years ago when I was talking about the K-drama Signal, which was inspired by like real life events that happened in Korea, like real life crimes? Memories of a Murder is also inspired by a real life series of murders that happened in Korea. He was the first like famous Korean serial killer in the 1980s. As of here now, the year 2020, we finally know who the perpetrator is. But at the time that Bong Joon Ho was filming, no one had a single clue who the person responsible actually was. Memories of a Murder is essentially Bong Joon Ho's twist on that set of murders. Memories of a Murder follows essentially the detective team that is called in to try and solve the series of murders that's happening in the countryside. It was such a like incredibly gripping and suspenseful movie, and like all Bong Joon Ho films, it is visually so beautiful. That guy like really knows how to work a camera, how to set up a scene, how to film an ensemble cast together without actually wasting the fact that it's an ensemble, it's like a group of people. And it's one of those movies that like every time I sit down to watch it, I just get like sucked into the story. I get sucked into how he chooses to tell the story, just like the clashing personalities of all of the people involved. It is unfortunately kind of like a sausage fest because it takes place in a police station in Korea in like the 80s. It's like a bunch of dudes, but the story is so fascinating. The cinnamon topography, y'all, is so good. Like, it's the freaking poetic cinema meme. Like, God, I love it so much. And so if you're more into like crimes, murders, mysteries, etc., Memories of a Murder is the one for you. Now, this wasn't on the original list, but while we're here talking about the topic of like Korean film, I would like to recommend people please watch The Handmaiden if you have not already. Especially if you're tired of watching things that like just have male protagonists, The Handmaiden is the one for you. It's actually based off of an English novel called Fingersmith. It's set like maybe like 100 years ago in the past. A young poor woman who is like a criminal, a thief, is sent into the house of a rich old man and his niece, this like rich young woman, in order to try and scam them of all of their money. That is literally all of the plot that I will give you, because The Handmaiden, it's almost like a psychological thriller. It's like you walk in thinking one thing's gonna happen, and then the movie takes like 15 different sharp turns. You're like, oh my god, what goes on? But, and this is so crucial, everything resolves in such an immensely satisfying way. No weird resolutions, loose ends, questions, etc. So it's like one of those movies where I'm like, listen, sit down, enjoy the ride. Also, lesbians. Just gonna throw that out there. So, you know, if you don't get around to watching it in May, June is Pride Month. please go watch The Handmaiden. 3 movies that I have not yet watched, but which have been highly recommended to me, and so I will be watching sometime probably within the next couple of weeks, are Arrival. This won the Academy Award for Best Picture like a while ago. It's about like aliens who come to Earth, and then the US military, in an attempt to sort of figure out what the hell the aliens want, hire Amy Adams, who's a linguist, to try and figure out what they're saying. And it was actually my old French linguistics professor who really recommended I watch that movie. The other film that somebody recommended I watch was nominated for the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. I think it lost to like Toy Story 4. It's called I Lost My Body. It's about a hand that gets cut off that tries to find its way back to its owner. And then the last movie that's on my to watch, because my friends have been haranguing me to see it, because I think I'm like the last person in my friends group who hasn't yet seen this movie, and it's a shame because my man's Chris Evans is in it. It's Knives Out by Rian Johnson. From what I'm given to understand, it's basically like a classic like Clue, Mr. Plum in the library with the candlestick, whodunit, Agatha Christie situation. I love detective stories and mysteries. Also love Chris Evans, he's my favorite Chris. Hemsworth is a close second, so I'm excited to watch it. Those are all of my movie recommendations. I was going to discuss like my book recommendations and my podcast recommendations, but I feel like I'm running out of sunlight and I've been talking for ages. Here's what I am going to say in terms of books. I'm participating in the Asian Readathon, and I've picked out like 5 or 6 different books by Asian authors to read during the month of May. If you're interested in knowing what those books are and why I picked them, I made a very short like 10-minute video basically discussing the things that I was planning on reading. I'm gonna link that up in the cards. Beyond the books in that video, however, a book that I have read and I like lost my mind about is The Hunger Games. I never read The Hunger Games when it had initially come out. I think I was like in the right age demographic, or maybe I just slightly missed it. I don't know why, but I never picked up The Hunger Games, and I finally read the first book, and my god, I have so many thoughts and so many feelings. I actually, like a couple days ago, filmed a video like blabbering about The Hunger Games. I think I might just like edit it and upload it instead of trying to discuss all my feelings about it right now. But TLDR, like, if you've never read The Hunger Games before, pick them up, man. Pick them up. I was also going to talk about podcasts, but daylight is quickly fading and I feel like I'm running out of battery, so do I do this really quickly? Maybe I will just mention the podcast at another time, because I'm filming this like at the very start of May. Who knows when it'll actually go up, but at the very end of May I want to film an actual like faves and hates, hits and misses video, because it's been a while and because I've consumed a lot of media, and while I've shared what I would consider to be like the cream of the crop, with the exception of Tiger King, with you today, there are and there will be some honest to god duds in the things that I end up watching, and I want to be given the opportunity to roast them. On top of that, like, there were a couple TV series and books and stuff that I just like threw out the name of very casually today, which I will watch over the course of May, and if something very particularly touches me, I want it to kind of have space in a favorites video. So I think I will talk about the podcasts I was going to talk about in that, because all 3 of them are like long-standing favorite podcasts. However, let me just throw the titles out in case people are really looking for something to listen to. The 3 podcasts I was going to recommend are The Read, Call Your Girlfriend, and the Tableau podcast. So that's everything. My battery really about to run out now. Thank you so much for watching this incredibly long video. As always, I hope you have a great upcoming week. And even if the rest of your week ends up becoming messy or imperfect, I hope that you're still able to create and experience some truly beautiful moments. Thanks for watching. Bye.